Yo, and welcome back to the Banter Boys podcast. My name is Sanji, with me is nobody, because this is an Inside Trax special. So as promised, during the preseason, we said we'd want to bring back the Inside Trax reps, keep in touch with them. So what we've done over this international break is have some of our reps send us some solo recordings that were compiled into mini montages. So essentially, they're answering the following questions. The first question is, from their club, which assets would they currently buy low and sell high? Second question, any surprising statistics from the first 4 game weeks? And then finally, their current season forecast based on how their club has started their season. So one by one, I'll be introducing the name of the rep, the club that they're representing, and their Twitter handle. So if you could kindly give them a follow, show your support, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. But yeah, let's get started. So first up, we've got Ben, our Manchester City rep. His handle is @BenChickens.
Okay, Sanjay, you asked me to do some recording for you, Inside Trax. 4 weeks in, I've just had some wonderful black cherry cheesecake, and I've been watching I, Claudius repeats for those people. If it's new to you, watch I, Claudius on BBC. Anyway, Manchester City. I've got 4 questions and I've got 4 answers. Buy low. Grealish. Grealish is injured. He can't help being injured. He will come back, and he'll come back fighting. Buy low on him. Sell high. Alvarez. Is this sustainable? Is this not sustainable? Get as much as you can. Get irregular. Alvarez is the favourite Tottenham toy at the moment. He is playing very close to the scoring points. I don't think this is sustainable. It might be, but I think it's worth cashing in on for a more established forward. Also, Doku. Fantastic player, it appears, but he's only played a small part of one game. Cash him in if you can. Again, go for an established player. And all those defenders, those City defenders, those Akanjis with 25 points, those Arcades with 33 points. They've had 2 clean sheets. They don't score ghosties. If you can, cash them in. I managed to get, Akanji happened to be around, so I just picked him up because the fixtures were good. The fixtures have been good. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that Man City defenders are going to be. Just sell them high if you can. Okay, surprising statistics. Well, it's been fairly steady for City. They have had an easy start to the season. Don't forget that. But they've been ruthless. Again, I'll contrast them with Chelsea. Chelsea have not been ruthless. Chelsea lost 1-0 to Notts Forest. They had a higher XG than Man City, who won 5-1 against Fulham. City have been ruthless. Remember that. Forecast. I've been asked to look at a forecast for the rest of the season. I think at the moment we're doing as well as we could have thought. It's just steady away. Lots of injuries, losing a couple of players in terms of loans and selling. Loans, McAtee to Sheffield United, which was predictable. I'm not sure he comes back. I think he probably stays there. Palmer reportedly unhappy with getting his minutes, and sadly with Pep, when Pep says in Pep language, a bit like I, Claudius, if you start saying to Pep, I'm not getting the minutes, Pep starts saying to you, well, you go somewhere else then. Because part of the package is you get the minutes that get given to you. You're part of a squad. Don't be precious. So he's gone. What do I say in forecast? Difficult to tell. There are a lot of strong teams. I particularly fear Liverpool. And what else have we got to do? So again, surprising statistics. I suppose it's just, I was just looking through the figures of what players have been scoring on Trax. And Haaland's 90, Alvarez 79, Foden 55, and that's virtually off the 3 games for Foden. I'd still say that you just need to be careful with City players. Don't go too hard in on them, and try and look for value elsewhere. Frankly, if you do see the likes of unusual players. When I say unusual players, Bob or Gomez starting, because they came on as subs in the last game, because City have now got a very small roster. Please don't laugh if you're called Ryan Barnes, but they've got a very small roster. You've got to feel sorry for them, Ryan. But they could be quite stretched if they get a few more injuries. That's just people to look out for. But I think the difficulty talking about Man City is Man City is so well exposed. There are so many writers about Man City. Sadly, I'm not going to come up with any surprises. So if you came on here looking for surprises, I'm sorry, you're disappointed. So my advice is eat more cheesecake and watch I, Claudius. Good night.
Well, I'm definitely going to go buy a slice of cheesecake tomorrow. So just a disclaimer to all the listeners out there. Some of this content might be a few days old. We just had a bit of delay compiling all the recordings together. So if any of the references to, match history, etc. seems like one game out of date, I apologize. Because some of this was recorded during the international break and some post-international break. So... But yeah, anyways, we'll move on to our next rep. So, our next club that we want to talk about is Tottenham Hotspur. Our regular rep, Nate, is on holiday, so Chuck Booth has graciously stepped in for him to chat everything Spurs, and you can find him on X, his handle at Chuck Booth Sport.
Hello and welcome. I'm Chuck Booth, and usually I would start this with I'm a tortured Spurs fan, but in this case, at least so far 4 games into the season, it's been a wonderful time under Ange Postecoglou, and it's hopefully he'll be able to keep up everything in charge of Spurs and what he's doing to make this one of the most productive teams for all of us fantasy managers all around. I'd like to start by saying thanks to the Banter Boys for the invite onto the pod today, and but with a limited bit of time, let's get to it and breaking down what we've seen in Spurs assets this season. Well, I've already mentioned that they've been one of the best fantasy teams in the league so far, with 9 players averaging 10 points per game, which, while not a valuable statistic, it's also not an inflated one, because out of those 9 players, all of them except Manor Solomon, who we'll get to more later, has been an actual starter on the team, starting more than 2 games this season. And you also have Papsar, who's close to hitting 10 points a game too, after his breakthrough in midfield. When you look at the schedule, you have Sheffield United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Luton Town, Fulham, at Crystal Palace to get you through October. So even if you're looking at the schedule outside of potentially benching a defender in upcoming matches, like there's not really anything that you should be afraid of when you look at running Spurs assets out there for the foreseeable future. Which brings us to question number one that I'm kind of charged with answering, and that's who would you buy low and who can you sell high? There's a bit of a problem is that part of your window to buy low, unless you're looking at a player like Richarlison, Brennan Johnson, guys who aren't actually starters, that window is kind of gone. Like, I think you can probably still convince someone that, like, Pedro Porro is someone that they can trade, especially with the fact that there are some tough defensive games coming up. But when you look at, like, the guys you want and, like, Madison, Son, you're not buying them low. They were first round or borderline first round picks for a reason. But, and even with Manor Solomon, like, you could have bought him low like a week ago, but coming off of a like 26-point outburst ahead of the international break makes it quite tough to be able to actually get him without paying more than you would like to. So you kind of just have to hope that he doesn't start a game coming up and that you can use that as a window to buy low. The only person who I would potentially even look at selling high is potentially if you could move, and I tried to do this today and it unfortunately didn't work, but if you could move Dejan Kulusevski in a deal getting like Jared Bowen, I would do it just because that's kind of a deal where you're moving kind of a third or fourth rounder to go up to get a second rounder. That's also why it's tough to do without some additional toss-ins. One guy who you could also toss in is Destiny Udogie. While I've been impressed with his start so far, I'm just still not 100% sure. I mean, we know clearly he's not going to be a player that's averaging 11.5 fantasy points per game. We also know that assists are rare enough for wingbacks that he's not going to get 2 more assists in his next 4 games. So if there's one guy whose numbers are probably inflated when you're looking at things, I would think it's his. Also around like kind of surprising statistics that we've seen so far. The first one is just the fact that James Maddison is averaging 2 shots on target per game. Clearly, you don't even need to know much about James Maddison's play or really much of anything around soccer to just know that that's not sustainable. While it's not necessarily going to like hugely negatively impact his performance ongoing, it does one show an uptick in his role by the fact that he's allowed to just be a free shooter for Spurs under Postecoglou, and but like just when he's been averaging closer to a shot on target per 90 minutes played for his entire career up to now, some of his numbers will just dip a little bit. But it's also just fine because when you're looking at an attack that creates as much as Spurs do, which is why he also has 10 key passes during these games, like he's going to be fine overall and still very good first round value. Next up is just, again, looking at Manor Solomon. He has 5 key passes, 2 assists, 2 tackles, 1, and only 1 start this season. While Again, he's not going to put up a 28 performance every single time he starts. This is one of the reasons why it was such an interesting signing when Spurs added him over the summer. He is closer to the mold of a Posteglu winger than what we were seeing with Son on the left wing, and it's also just like much more dynamic than what we would see with Richarlison moving out to the left wing as well, which is why like kind of Richarlison's role out of everyone is the one like most up in flux with Spurs right now, because like you just don't know what you're gonna see from him moving forward, because Son in one game has already proven that he's the best 9 on the team. Solomon has also come close to proving that he's the best winger on the team. And then even if you look behind him, you have Ivan Perisic also as someone who is a winger that will make a difference down the stretch. Perisic isn't someone who you should really be looking at rostering unless you just have excess space, but he's definitely a guy that you need to stay close to the streaming wires for, because once he gets his chance to start out there, you're going to want him like as soon as possible. But definitely, if you can, get Solomon. He is still available somehow in some leagues, so you may be able to get him, especially in those less competitive home leagues around. Looking at the rest of the season forecast, I initially picked Spurs to finish 8th in the table. I still don't know if I'm fully buying them for top 4, but I am willing to move them up to top 6 based on what I've seen, just because of the fact of what Madison and Son are doing. And if that duo can stay healthy, then this team will be just fine, especially when Brennan Johnson can come in and like kind of move things around as well in the future. Also, I think I'm realistically like all in on Spurs defenders. While I mean I don't mind just selling high on Udogie, that doesn't mean that at least you shouldn't still be holding Vicario, Porro, and Christian Romero. Just because that trio has enough in those peripheral counting stats and just opportunities on attacking plays when also having a dangerous set piece delivery from Son to make things count from that end of things as well. So just to close out, good luck. Try to do everything you can to get James Madison. If you see Matt or Solomon, pick him up. But yeah, Spurs assets are going to be kind of hard to come by in the near future. So you're really just biding your time until their first loss and seeing what happens. Hope this helped.
Next up, we've got our Sheffield United rep, James Hanwell. His handle at J_Hanwell.
So, Sheffield United, it's a tough start to the season. I think we left all our transfer activity too late. We sold Iliman Ndiaye and Sander Berg in the days just before the season started. Didn't have opportunity to replace them, and therefore started the season against Crystal Palace and Manchester City and Nottingham Forest with a cobbled together team. With none of the new signings being able to start those games. So it wasn't until Everton that we named a team that kind of resembled something looking like a competent first team. Hit the ground running, got a 2-2 draw there to get his first point of the season. And now it's about building on that. It's the international breaks come at a good time. Get his new signings bedded in. And yeah, I think we can really kick on now. in terms of assets that we've currently got, there's not really a lot to take away from the first 3 or 4 games, although the Everton game did show a glimpse of Cameron Archer and what he can do. If he was available on any waiver wire, I'd definitely be picking him up as a kind of 3rd or 4th choice striker, particularly in home games when we're expected to be a bit more on the front foot and attack a bit more than we may do away from home against the bigger clubs. I think he'll be deadly, and he showed in his first game, scoring and having a big hand in the second. He will be a very good asset and a good 3rd or 4th choice striker. Apart from that, the only one that I will keep an eye on is James McAtee, who we've managed to sign on loan from Man City. He was a major part of our promotion season, and to get him back, I think our manager said that he was his number 1 target to get back in. So to get him on loan is a major boost for us. And again, like Cameron Archer, I think when we play anybody but the big 6 and McAtee plays, he will be the creative force. So he'll be picking up his key passes. And lots of those I expect, because he will play just behind the strikers and be expected to supply them with the chances. Forecast for the rest of the season for us, we will be bottom 5 or 6, no doubt. I don't think we've got the squad depth. Worrying news over the international break, a couple of players picking up niggles, George Baldock and Arnel Ahmedhodzic. So hopefully they can come back, because we haven't got the squad to deal with big injuries to big players. But if we can regularly put out our strongest team week in, week out, I think there are 3 worse teams. I've seen Luton, Burnley, who I think are really struggling, and I expect us to be better than those. Whether we can find another team to be better than, time will tell. We've got a tricky fixture list coming up. Tottenham, Newcastle, West Ham. If we can come out of those 3 games with a couple of points, then I think that puts us in good stead and will give us confidence boost. The one thing that has surprised me this season has been us leaking goals, particularly against Everton. It's something that even last season and last time in the Premier League, we did not concede many goals. So I would avoid our defenders at the moment. I don't think many people need for me to say that, but defence is probably not where we're looking at the moment. I would focus on our creative players, James McAtee, Cameron Archer, and Ollie McBurney, who will look a real handful against Everton, and it was great to see him back. He will get you aerials, key passes, and I expect him to score 1 or 2 goals this season, particularly in a partnership with Cameron Archer.
Next up, we have our Wolves rep, Neil. His handle at Neil R. Cartwright.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Neil, the Wolverhampton Wanderers rep for the Banter Boys Inside Trax podcast, with a quick summary of Wolves' season so far and how the players themselves are performing in Fantrax. So, looking at options to buy low, really. First one that comes to mind is Matheus Cunha. He's been a very strong ball carrier so far for Wolves, given his position as a forward. He's been dropping deep to pick up the ball. Played brilliantly against Man United and was able to routinely break defensive lines and really bring other players into the game as well. So if he's able to do that consistently, along with getting more and more shots on target, he'll become a really, really strong Fantrax asset if he could just add a few goals to his game. Next, I'll be looking at Hwang Hee-chan. Now, he's got an incredibly low draft percentage, only 4% across all the leagues taking part, and he already has 2 goals in losing games as a substitute. Now, that could indicate that with a little bit more playing time, he could have a much bigger impact on games, and if he can establish himself, look to generate some really strong form going into this crucial part of the season. The next player I've gone for is Pablo Sarabia. Now, he may start to rotate in and out of the team a little bit, particularly with how Wolves have strengthened during the last week of the transfer window. However, he has been playing a calming role in the final third and has been able to link the midfield and the attack and been able to hold the ball and play enough quality passes through to bring other players into good point-scoring positions. If Wolves could actually start to finish their dinner, then he could be a very strong asset. He's only been drafted by 8% of leagues and is averaging 7 points per game. So if he can improve there, he could look very valuable as well. And that brings me lastly on to my final pick for a buy low spot, which is Jean-Rick Bellegarde. Now, he's one of the new kids on the block. He came in to replace Mateus Nunes on the last day of the transfer window. And at his old club, Strasbourg, he'd actually started the season incredibly well with 2 goals and 2 assists in his first 3 games before joining Wolves. It could take him a couple of weeks to settle, but he's very highly regarded and could actually compete with Sarabia directly for that starting spot behind the striker. Now, looking at who we could look to sell high from Wolves, controversial as it may be, I would actually suggest perhaps the goalkeeper, Jose Sarr. Now, he had an incredible game against Everton, which enabled Wolves to secure the win and again proved himself to be a fantastic shot stopper. He's been drafted in 59% of leagues, so that's echoed really throughout the actual players throughout the game itself. And, he could look to retain that value long enough over the next few weeks for you to perhaps offer a player, or for you to be able to trade him for a player in Fab. That said, are there any other keepers that perhaps have this relatively low profile that are as capable as he is that you can bring in as a free agent? It's up to you to decide really. But if you've got him and he's scoring for you, I'd certainly look at seeing what kind of value you may be able to bring in later in the next few weeks. The biggest surprise so far this season for me has been Pedro Neto, who actually looks back to his best and is playing like a round one pick. He's currently only been drafted by 55% of leagues, which is quite staggering considering that he's averaging 18.12 points against Man United, Brighton, Everton, and Palace in those first 4 games. And he's also started every single one of them. So across the league, he's actually ranked number 5 at the moment, behind only Haaland, Alvarez, Maddison, and Saka. And if he can keep this up, he'll no doubt become the top tier Fantrax asset that most players thought he would be a couple of seasons ago before injuries really became a factor. And most importantly, help Wolves themselves to ensure a really successful first season under Gary O'Neill. Now, finally, just a quick sum up of the season so far. As expected, given the opposition so far, it's been a little bit mixed. They're incredibly unlucky to not at least draw with Man United. However, that performance will have helped to allay the fears of many fans given the situation in which the game actually took place. Wolves were in a period of transition between bringing in Gary O'Neill and losing Julian Lopetegui the week before. There would have been a lot of uncertainty amongst the players, which undoubtedly would have resonated throughout the fan base as well. And to go away to Old Trafford and put in such a spirited performance and to come away feeling like we could have had more, it's very, very encouraging. It was that we went away to. We hosted Brighton for the first game of the season. Unfortunately, as always, they had our number and it showed in a 4-1 result in favour of Brighton. However, Wolves themselves were quite competitive, but there was a second half collapse which showed that defensive errors are present at the moment. And really, if that's the case, then we need our attackers to start becoming a lot more ruthless in front of goal and retaining the ball and scoring a few more goals and taking advantage of the opportunities that players like Sarabia and fingers crossed Jean-Ric Bellegarde and also Pedro Neto have been creating. It was moving on from there. It was a club best performance from Jose Sarr that brought Wolves a 1-0 win against Everton with a last-minute goal from Sasa Kaladzic coming in. And really, again, just as I've mentioned before, helped to establish the value of Jose Sarr as a very competent, maybe top 10 goalkeeper in the league that could be worth, that could retain a value when it comes to trading or for your team itself. And then we came along to the last result, which basically was a very disappointing loss to Crystal Palace on a Sunday, which really, when you take the average across all 4 games there, shows that it is likely to be quite an inconsistent season. However, there is potential for some success and stability. Gary O'Neill doesn't look to be fazed by the big job and hasn't been afraid to make changes where necessary. And players are emerging that may have some value actually in front of goal now, such as Wang, Cunha, and Neto. They all look threatening enough on the ball. The main question is, do they have it about them to do something with it? Only time will tell. And with that, my current forecast for the season, really, I'd take anywhere between 10th and 14th. Wolves' next 3 games are Liverpool, Luton, and then City, so it'll be difficult to get any kind of consistency there, though we're hoping for 3 points against Luton. Anything else there will be a bonus. But afterwards, there should be quite a favourable run of games leading us into the busy Christmas period, and I think this will be quite key for Wolves and how successful the season will be. So we'll check in after that and see if Pedro Neto is still doing the business.
And our last club for this series is Everton. Our Everton rep is Matty Stevenson, and his handle is at mstevo91.
Hi, my name is Matty. I'm the Everton fan representative for the Banter Boys Inside Trax podcasts, and today I'm going to go over some questions that have been put to me regarding Everton from the Banter Boys, and let's dive straight into those. So the first one is, currently which Everton assets would you buy low and which ones would you sell high? So buy low right now, the first player I would target is Dwight McNeil. He's only made one substitute appearance so far this season due to injury, but I'm sure people who have played Fantrax before know what a good ghost point scorer he is. I believe last year, after Sean Dyche was appointed by Everton, that Dwight McNeil was top 3 overall players the rest of the season, which is pretty impressive for a team that struggled a lot last year. So I definitely target him right now, especially if you're in need of a midfielder. But even if you're not, I'd look to definitely get him in. He's going to be straight back in the team and on set pieces, especially corners. My next buy low target would be Jack Harrison. Again, somebody who is new to the club, hasn't made an appearance so far, but I believe he's a typical Sean Dyche player. Works hard, has a little bit of quality, and I'm sure you've seen him put up some decent points for Leeds over the last couple of years. So he's another one I'd look to target. I think he's going to be a regular too. Once he gets in the team, I think it'll be pretty hard to displace him. And then my third buy low target right now would be James Tarkowski. Not put up great points so far this year, due to the lack of clean sheets and the amount of goals we've conceded. So that hasn't helped him at all. I would definitely look to maybe try and get him in. I think you can get him in pretty cheap right now. And if we start to pick up some clean sheets, he'll be getting 15 plus points, I believe, when these clean sheets come in easily. So, yep, they're my 3, Dwight McNeil, Jack Harrison, and James Tarkowski to buy low. Regarding sell high with Everton, this is pretty tough. There's not much to sell high right now after these first 4 games. If I have to pick one person I'd look to maybe sell high, it'll be Abdoulaye Doucouré. I believe he's averaging around 9 points a game right now. He comes up with some vital goals and assists, and I think he will keep his place in the team when everybody is fit and available. But if you can maybe tie him in with another player in a 2-for-1 deal, maybe something I'd look into. But yeah, he's probably the only one at the moment, unfortunately, as a sell high for Everton. Question number 2 was any surprise in Everton statistics from game week 1 to 4. One that was pretty surprising is that we have had a pretty high XG so far, especially in the games against Fulham and Wolves. We had a lot of attempts, just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. The goalkeepers in both games had the game of their lives. So yeah, that was a little surprising. Hopefully now with Beto coming in and hopefully with Calvert-Lewin getting a run of games, we can hopefully turn that XG into actual goals. So yep, that was a pretty surprising one. And another little surprise was probably the lack of clean sheets at the other end. When Dyche came in last year, we won a few games 1-0, especially at home. this year we've been a bit weak at the back, as mentioned just in the previous question about Tarkowski. So yeah, hopefully that improves, and hopefully a few more clean sheets come in, and that'll see all of the defenders' average points pick up over the season. And then the last question that was put to me was current season forecast based on how Everton have started. So, not started very well, not exactly had any tough games so far. Aston Villa away, probably the toughest game. To only come out of these first 4 games with 1 point is pretty disappointing. I would have liked to at least have 5 or 6, especially with the 2 home games. I believe they were definitely both winnable games. So yeah, not looking good so far for the rest of the season. I think it could be similar to the last couple of seasons where we've definitely flirted with relegation, and could be down there again come the business end of the season. And then we brought in some decent players though over the summer. Dan Juma on loan, Jack Harrison on loan, Beto. But we did lose some strength in depth also, losing Alex Iwobi on the last day of the season and Neil Mopey. And those 2 were not replaced, so that's left us a little short. Again, we brought in a little bit of quality, but was just lacking that quantity now, which might come to bite us later on in the season. So yeah, that's my insight into Everton so far. Hopefully, it was useful, and go out and get those buy low players, and you won't regret it. Up the Toffees.
So that wraps up our second Inside Tracks special for the first international break. Hopefully you had a lot of takeaways from the 2 special segments that we released. We're planning to hopefully bring back the other 10 reps as well in the next international break. But other than that, thank you so much for your support, and just stay tuned, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.